Hey, Mo Hashim with Flat Fee Landlord DC Metro. Today I want to talk about how to handle or avoid a tenant from damaging your rental property. One of your biggest fears as a landlord is going to be your tenant damaging your property. It's an investment for you. You want to make sure that your investment is taken care of. And whenever you place a tenant into that property, you always run the risk of a tenant defacing it, vandalizing it, negligent towards it, and pretty much just damaging your property. So as a landlord, here are a few things that you can do to try to mitigate that risk of damage for your rental property. All right, first and foremost, if you know me at all, if you watch any of my other videos, you know that to me, the most important part of the entire rental process is the tenant placement. Who do you first put into that property? Okay, if you are doing your homework ahead of time and you are doing proper background checks, you're interviewing previous landlords, and you're getting a good idea of who this person is that you are allowing to move into your investment as a tenant, then you should also know whether they have a history of damaging rental properties. So tip number one, whenever you're going out and you're first advertising your property for rent, if you do come across somebody that's interested in your property, obviously make sure you go through and do a proper rental background check. I have a video on that. You're more than welcome to take a look at that as well. But during that process, you also want to make sure that interviewing previous landlords is something that you do. Okay, so if they just came from renting another property and they're applying for yours, you want to reach out to the landlord that previously managed or was the landlord for that property, and you're going to ask them, hey, did they leave this property in the way that they're supposed to? Did they damage it? Did you have any history of damage for the property? Have you returned their security deposit in full? Things like that, questions like that. Another landlord is probably gonna look out for other landlords. Obviously, they want to make sure that we have a pretty good, nice network so that we're looking out for one another when it comes to placing tenants in the property. So they should be pretty forthcoming if they've had a bad experience with that tenant and that tenant has a history of defacing the property. They should be pretty forthcoming if you ask them those questions. But you're not going to know that unless you actually do reach out to the previous landlord. So again, this always comes back to doing your homework ahead of time. If you want to make sure a tenant does not damage your property, you want to make sure you're doing all your homework ahead of time when you're first placing that tenant, and you want to ask the previous landlord and previous landlords, go back 2 or 3 landlords and ask them if they have any issues with the way they returned the rental property after they rented it. Of course, you're going to get this information from the prospective tenant. You can either already have it in your rental application for them to give you that information. If it's not in your rental application, make sure you ask the prospective tenant that information and get previous landlords' information, and definitely call them, interview them, ask them, make sure the time frames match up to what they put on the application versus what the landlord says. That way they're not lying and it's truthful, which is a whole nother subject. But definitely make sure you reach out to previous landlords and make sure you don't have a history of bad tenancy in that matter. Another thing that you can do is obviously ask for a security deposit. You should always be having a security deposit, but the amount of security deposit is limited not only to state laws, but also really to what you're comfortable as a landlord. Okay, in Texas you can't have more than 2 months worth of security deposit, so you obviously can't have any more than that. I have unfortunately seen situations where landlords don't even ask for a security deposit just because maybe they don't know any better, or 2, they just want to make it appealing for a tenant to move in quicker. So if they don't ask for a security deposit, then that makes it, they think their vacancy is going to drop and somebody's going to move in quicker. Again, unfortunately, if somebody doesn't have any money on the line in the form of a security deposit, or very little, sometimes they do like a flat fee of like $500 or something little that doesn't even equal 1 month's rent, then a tenant really doesn't have a whole lot on the line when they move out. So they may not treat that property as well as they should because they know, they don't have $1,000 or multiple thousands of dollars in escrow as a security deposit, whereas somebody that does have that, they're going to look after that property a little bit more. If they do damage it on accident, they're probably going to ask a professional or themselves. They're going to fix it before they move out, so you don't have to worry about that when the tenant moves out. So that's another way of ensuring, or at least raising or lowering the risk that a tenant may move out and damage the property. So those are the two biggest things. Definitely look into on the front end. Make sure you're checking with previous landlords to see if they have a history of damaging property. And number two, have a pretty good, nice size chunk security deposit, so that way they know they're at risk of losing it if they don't give you the property back the way they should. If you got any other questions regarding property management or how to handle a tenant from damaging a rental property, go to our website at flatfeelandlord.com, or you can give us a call at any one of our DC metro area offices.